Something that you wanted to talk about, really an issue involving what we commonly refer to as nanny scams. What is it that your office is doing? What is the message that you really want the people in Cincinnati to get from the Attorney General?
You know, we're seeing a lot of these nanny scams. You know, you go up online, you're a nanny or you're a babysitter or you're a dog walker or you want to take care of the elderly, and someone, quote, hires you online. You never have any contact with them other than online. And they send you a check, and they tell you in the check, they send you a check for $5,000, and it tells you to keep so much of it as down payment, but the rest of it, go out and buy my mother a wheelchair, or put this down as rent. And so you send these checks out, your checks, and they're good, and of course the check you received, no good at all. It's a kind of a variation on a scam that we see a lot, with is this exchange of checks. So we just warn people to be very, very careful. Going up on the internet can be a good thing. You can find a job, and sometimes you can find a spouse, many things on the internet, but be very, very careful.
And is there any particular sort of person that they're preying on? Is there anything that any group of people that they're really targeting?
You know, these scam artists deal in numbers. So they put the net out quite a bit, and they know they're not going to catch everyone, but they're going to catch enough to make a lot of money for them. You know, they could be sitting in Puerto Rico, they could be offshore somewhere. You don't know that. You think they're in the next town. You think that they have an elderly mother and they need someone to take care of her, or they have a 5-year-old child that needs to be taken care of. So we just tell people, be very, very careful. If you've not had personal contact with this individual and they send you a check or tell you they're going to send a check, and they want you in turn to send a check to someone else, that's a pretty good tip-off if this thing is a scam.
What's your office doing? What has your office doing, and how many of these cases? Yeah. I mean, have you got some data on enforcement?
You know, we see every day complaint about a scam that involves an exchange of checks. The most important thing our office can do, frankly, is what I'm doing right now, which is to warn the public. Many times, in most cases, we can't find these people. The local police can't find them because they may live in another country. They may live in another state. They're very good. They're very careful, and they're just, you know, counting on a certain percentage of people that they try to rip off, actually give in to them and send them that money.
And are you seeing a spike? Is this something that you're seeing more and more of?
We're seeing more of this nanny scam. It seems to have come up in the last few months, and we just want to warn people about it. You know, be careful. Use the internet. Internet's a great thing. You can get jobs. You can do all kinds of things on the internet. But just be very, very careful when you're dealing with someone who you really don't know, and you're not making any face-to-face contact, and they're asking you to do something that in retrospect you'll look back and say, why did I do that?
Shifting gears a little bit. I understand you were at John Kasich's announcement when he announced he was running.
I was, yes.
He was running for president. Is this your guy? Is this who you're going to back?
I endorsed John Kasich. I've known him since 1978. We served in the State Senate together. We served in the U.S. House of Representatives together. I think he's got a compelling story. Balanced the federal budget when he was budget chairman in the House of Representatives. His story as what he's done as governor of the state of Ohio, I think, is also a great story. 80-some cents in the rainy day fund when he became governor, is over in the billions of dollars now. He's got a good story. And I think coming from the state of Ohio, which is always a battleground state, gives him a leg up, really.
Anything about the timing? Do you think getting in as late as he did is going to hurt him? Can it possibly help him? Your thoughts on that? Because you've run a race or two.
Yeah, you know, you always think about the timing in politics, and timing is the key. Did John Kasich get in at the right time? I think he probably did. The dust was starting to settle a little bit. The first debate was coming up, and I think it was good for him to have a big push. It was not just the push of the free media that he got, but also, you know, they were reported they put over $3 million on the air in New Hampshire. So I think that the timing is pretty good. This is something that's very unusual for a Republican contest, for presidency, and that is we don't really have a front runner. It's wide open. It can be won by anybody, and it's going to be pretty fascinating to watch.
Do you think he's got a legitimate shot?
John Kasich very well could be president of the United States. We don't know whether he will be. We got a long way to go. But coming from the state of Ohio, being a governor who has solved real problems, I think gives him an advantage. Also, people I think are looking for someone who's genuine, someone who's candid, someone who frankly is blunt. John Kasich fits all that. I think that's how he comes across to people, and what you see is what you get. And this may be the year, frankly, where those kind of attributes bode very well for him.
I'm sure you've been following this whole situation with the University of Cincinnati police officer shooting and killing a gentleman in a traffic stop. Just from a distance, your overall assessment of how this has been handled by law enforcement, government, your thoughts?
Well, this is certainly a tragedy. Our office is not involved either to investigate it or to prosecute it. This is being handled by the Cincinnati Police Department and by Prosecuting Attorney Joe Dieters. I think they've handled it well. I think Dieters made the right decision when he said that the body camera video would not be released until after the grand jury is done. You know, as a prosecuting attorney, and I was one many years ago, you have an obligation. And one of the obligations is to ensure that if someone is going to stand trial, if someone's going to be taken into a grand jury or a petit jury later on, that they have a fair trial. It's the Sixth Amendment. I think Dieters made the right decision not to release this video. And you know, the question is not, is the video going to be released? It is going to be released. It's just a question of when.
If it's released when the indictment comes out, if there is an indictment returned, is that the proper timing?
You know, I think a prosecuting attorney has to decide when to release a video. And so, you know, that's obviously going to be up to Prosecuting Attorney Dieters. Many times after an indictment comes down, a video would be released. In some cases, that video would not be released until the actual trial itself. And again, I think a prosecutor has to just judge the situation, make that call. It's really a judgment call. You're weighing, on the one hand, the desire for the community always to have all the facts, which in a shooting that could be controversial is probably a very, very good thing.
Hey guys.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, we're getting some sort
Oh,
of...
sorry. Okay.
All of a sudden, I don't know.
Well, maybe I'm moving.
Happy. Why don't you... Might be a cable thing. Where do you have the box there, Mike?
Yeah, there you go.
Just take that and...
You could just drop it.
Drop it
Drop
on
it.
the
Yeah, just drop it
floor.
on the floor.
I don't know if that's
See if that's all right.
It just started doing that.
Okay.
so.
Okay.
You were talking about the timing.
How we doing? Is that? Let's see if it comes through. We'll make sure that cable's
Yeah,
not.
talk a little bit.
Hey, this is Mike DeWine reporting from Cincinnati.
So far, so
Testing.
good, yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, we're talking about the timing, and that it is up to the prosecutor's discretion whether he releases it prior to indictment, at indictment, or at trial.
Well, I think Prosecutor Dieters has made the right decision not to release it now. He's made it clear this case is going to go into the grand jury very quickly. I think that's important as well. He would want to make sure that that grand jury is not biased in any way and has the opportunity to take a hard look at the case and make a decision. So I think that's, you know, it's the correct decision. I think the law is on his side. There is an exception to the open records rule in the state of Ohio, and that exception is if you're involved in an ongoing confidential police investigation. So it's not a question of is it going to be released. It's going to be released, and because Dieters has taken this case to a grand jury very quickly, it would appear to me that it probably will be released fairly soon.
Okay. This was a University of Cincinnati police officer some distance away from campus making a traffic stop. Have we gotten to the point where, I mean, do you think we need these university police departments, and should we look at their role interacting in a city like they do in Cincinnati?
Well, I think it's very important that any college or university that has their own sworn police department have all the training that any other police officer has. And the truth is that to become a police officer in the state of Ohio, there is a minimum amount of courses that you must take. That is true whether you work for the city of Cincinnati or whether you work for UC. The continuing training is also very important, and this is an area that I've started to really push recently. At my urging, the state legislature is now requiring 11 hours per year training for next year and 20 hours for every police officer in the state. So this is additional training. This is yearly training. We're focusing on a couple things in regard to this training that's coming up. One is how you deal with a life or death situation. We call it, reality training. So these officers have as close to reality as is humanly possible. That's very important. Second, we want to have more training in regard to how a police officer deals with someone who has a mental health problem. A lot of the shootings occur because the individual has a mental health problem. So it's a question of identifying that problem and then what are the techniques to de-escalate the situation. So I think police training, frankly, is the key, and we want to make sure that in Ohio, no matter where that officer is, whether it's in the smallest village or the biggest city or on a university campus, that they have good training.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't think of any other questions. Is there any topic that we didn't touch on
No.
that you really want to?
No, I'm fine.